The Alpha King sold her at dusk, because daylight would have made the shame too visible. Kessa Lorn stood on the treaty bridge with iron chains around her wrists and a black wool cloak pulled over her torn gray dress. Below the bridge, the river moved dark and swollen between the Wolf Kingdom and the Raven Court, carrying old rain, old bones, and the kind of silence that made soldiers tighten their hands around spear shafts. On the Wolf side, silver banners snapped in the wind. On the Raven side, there were no torches. Only black-robed figures standing beneath dead trees, their faces hidden behind long-beaked masks, while thousands of ravens watched from branches, broken towers, and treaty stones stained by centuries of bargains. Not one bird cried, not one wing beat. That silence frightened Kessa more than the chains. Wolves growled before they bit. Ravens watched as if they had already decided which part of you would remain after judgment. Lord Bellerin Vask unrolled the treaty scroll beside her. His white gloves were spotless despite the rain. Around his neck hung the treaty keeper's chain, each link marked with a wolf claw on one side and a raven feather on the other. He looked like a man built from law, not flesh. By debt of broken pact, he declared, the Wolf Court offers living tribute. Kessa kept her eyes forward. Not down. Down was for guilt. They had called her traitor's daughter before she understood what treason meant. Her father, Edric Lorn, had been a border scout between Wolflands and the Raven Court. He knew both roads, both languages, both kinds of silence. One winter morning, he was found dead beneath a feather-black tree with raven ink on his tongue and a torn treaty ribbon clenched in his fist. By noon, the court named him Oathbreaker. By night, his daughter was made packless. No house claimed her. No wolf answered her. No grave was opened for her father. For 9 years, Kessa had lived where the kingdom kept inconvenient living things, near kitchens, stables, cold corridors, and ledgers with names crossed out but never fully erased. She was not prisoner enough to be guarded, not servant enough to be paid, not noble enough to be protected. Now the treaty required a body, so they chose hers. Bellerin read on. The tribute bears no pack claim, no mate claim, no inheritance claim, and no royal protection. The last words struck harder than iron. No royal protection. They had to say it aloud, or the Raven Court might mistake the sale for sacrifice instead of disposal. Alpha King Merrick Solvarn stood 3 steps away, dressed in black battle leather, with a silver wolf clasp at his throat. Rain darkened his cloak. His face was severe, beautiful in the dangerous way winter cliffs were beautiful, with storm-amber eyes and a pale scar crossing one cheekbone. He had the stillness of a man trained never to show pain where enemies could use it. Kessa had seen him twice before. Once on the throne, once from the stable yard, when every wolf lowered its head as he rode past. He had not noticed her then. He noticed her now because he was selling her. That should have made hatred easy. It did not. His face was hard, but his left hand kept closing at his side, again and again, as if reaching for something no longer there. Kessa looked once. His shadow was wrong. It lay behind him on the wet stones, shaped like a wolf, but thin at the edges, frayed as torn cloth. The wind moved through it. Shadows did not move like that. Bellerin followed her gaze and stepped slightly in front of the king. "Do not look at his majesty," he said. Kessa almost smiled. Even her eyes had become property to redirect. "Am I sold already, my lord?" she asked. "Or may I still look before I am carried off?" A few soldiers inhaled. Bellerin's mouth curved with satisfaction, as if she had confirmed every stain placed on her blood. "See, Majesty. The Lorn insolence survives mercy." Marek's gaze settled on Kessa. There was no softness in it, but there was a tension. That was worse. "You understand the sentence?" he asked. His voice was lower than she expected. Kessa looked past him to the masked court beyond the bridge. "I understand. I am cheaper than war." Something moved in Marek's expression. Not regret. Not yet. A wound recognizing another wound before pride could stop it. Bellerin cut in. "The tribute accepts." "I did not say that." "You are packless," Bellerin said. "Your consent is not required." The ravens moved. Only their heads. Thousands of black beaks turned toward Bellerin at once. For the first time, the treaty keeper faltered. From the Raven Court side, one masked figure stepped forward. Its cloak was made of layered black feathers, each feather tipped with rain. The mask had no visible eyes, but Kessa felt examined down to the marrow. "The girl will cross alone," it said. Bellerin bowed stiffly. "As written. No chain." The bridge went silent. Belleran's gloved fingers tightened around the scroll. "The tribute is a traitor's daughter." "No chains," the raven figure repeated. "The chains assure delivery." Above the raven court, thousands of wings opened. Not flying, just opening. The sound was soft and enormous, like a storm taking breath. Marek's frayed shadow wolf lifted its head. Kessa saw it before anyone else did. The king's shadow was staring at the ravens, hungry, afraid, recognizing. Marek's jaw tightened, but he did not move toward her. His hand opened once, empty and useless at his side. Treaty law held him as visibly as iron held her wrists. Bellerin knew it. The Raven Court knew it. Kessa knew it too. If the Alpha King broke the offering before the Raven Court accepted or refused, the wolves would be named Oathbreakers again. War would not begin with a sword. It would begin with his hand reaching too soon. Kessa's chain began to tremble. At first, she thought she was shaking. Then the iron links rattled harder, beating against each other in a frantic rhythm. One raven left the dead tree and glided toward the bridge. Then another. Then 10. They did not land on Kessa's shoulders. They landed on the chains. Black claws closed over iron. Frost spread across the links. Bellerin snapped. "Do not touch treaty property." The first raven looked at him. Then it broke the chain with its beak. Iron fell open like rotten thread. Kessa's wrists dropped free. The wolf soldiers drew swords. The Raven Court did not move. Marek stepped forward once, then stopped so sharply his boots scraped stone. His shadow wolf lunged ahead of him without his body following, teeth bared at the broken chain. Bellerin saw that too. His face changed. Not fear. Opportunity. "Corpse magic," he shouted. "False crow, crown work. They are using dead bird sorcery to steal lawful tribute before witness." The ravens did not cry. That made the accusation sound smaller. Still, the soldiers lifted their blades. The treaty bridge filled with the metallic whisper of men deciding whether law wanted blood. The masked raven figure turned its beak toward Bellerin. "Careful, treaty keeper. A false crown is still a crown in the mouth of a liar." Bellerin's eyes flashed. "You will not dress theft as omen." Behind Kessa, more ravens descended. Hundreds, then thousands. They landed wing to wing, feather to feather, weaving themselves into a rising black shape. Not a complete throne, not yet. Something older than a chair and stranger than a crown. A high-backed shadow of feathers forming where no hands touched it, its arms curved like folded wings, its spine built from living black bodies that never crushed one another. Kessa could not breathe. The birds did not bow to her. That would have been too simple. They built behind her, as if answering a seat that had been empty too long. Marek stared at the shape with pain locked behind his eyes. His shadow wolf whined once, so low only Kessa seemed to hear it. Bellerin raised the treaty scroll like a shield. "She is wolf dead. She belongs to the pact." The raven figure stepped onto the bridge. Rain slid down its black mask. "No," it said. "She belongs to the oath beneath the pact." Kessa's broken chains lay at her feet. The unfinished raven throne rose higher behind her, blue-black and alive. The masked figure looked past Kessa to Alpha King Marek Solvarn. "Not your bride," it said. "Not your possession. Not yet the queen of any man." The ravens opened their eyes all at once, thousands of black beads catching the last red light of dusk. "She is the blood key to the throne your kingdom forgot it needed." Then the bridge stones beneath Kessa's feet turned black with feathers, and the Raven Court began to sing without sound. The soundless song did not enter Kessa's ears. It entered her bones. The bridge stones darkened beneath her feet, feather by feather, until the old treaty marks disappeared under a living black carpet. The ravens behind her held the unfinished shape of a throne, their bodies layered so carefully that no wing crushed another, no claw broke skin, no beak opened. They made no noise, yet Kessa felt their song press upward through the soles of her worn boots. It was not worship. That would have been simpler. It was recognition, asking a question. Kessa stood very still, her broken chains cold around her ankles, and refused to step backward into the throne. She did not know what it wanted. She had learned young that unknown mercy could be another kind of trap. Lord Bellerin saw her hesitation and seized it. Even she knows it is false. His voice carried across the bridge, clean and sharp, meant for soldiers more than ravens. Look at her, a traitor's daughter with broken chains and a dead bird chair. Is this your great omen? Corpse magic wearing feathers? The wolf soldiers tightened around their swords. Alpha King Merrick Solvarn did not draw his blade. He did not step to Kessa's side either. He stood exactly where treaty law held him, rain sliding along his scar, one hand half open at his side, as if the empty air hurt him. His shadow wolf had pulled farther ahead than before, stretched thin across the stones toward Kessa's broken chain. The creature's muzzle hovered inches from the snapped iron, trembling as though it smelled blood where there was none. Bellerin noticed. "Majesty," he warned softly, "the Raven Court is baiting your wolf." Marek's eyes did not leave the ravens. "And you are baiting my soldiers." Bellerin's face closed. It was not defense. Not yet. But it was not obedience either. That small fracture moved through the bridge like a blade slipping into a seam. The masked raven figure stepped closer. Rain streamed from its beak-shaped mask. "A blood key does not rule the throne," it said. "It opens the oath buried under it." Kessa's breath caught. There. A meaning, but not enough to hold. Bellerin laughed once. Convenient. When the false crown does not sit cleanly, you invent a hidden oath beneath it. The raven figure turned its mask toward him. "The oath was hidden before your grandfather learned to lie in silk." A few wolves growled. Bellerin raised the treaty scroll. "The pact recognizes only written debt. The pact you hold recognizes written debt." The raven figure lifted one black-gloved hand toward the bridge beneath Kessa. "The oath beneath it recognizes living cost." The words sank into the stones. The broken chains at Kessa's feet stirred, not the iron itself. The shadow of the iron. It peeled away from the wet stone in two thin black loops and slid toward the unfinished raven throne. The ravens opened just enough to let the chain shadow pass through them. When it touched the back of the throne, the entire shape shivered. Kessa felt the shiver in her spine. Merrick felt something too. His breath changed. His shadow wolf pressed its muzzle flat to the stone and whined. Bellerin stepped in front of him again, this time less smoothly. "Your wolf is being worked on." Merrick's voice lowered. "Move aside." "Majestu." I said move aside. Bellerin obeyed, but only by half a step. Kessa saw the calculation in that small refusal. Bellerin could not command the king, but he could surround him with law until every movement became dangerous. The raven figure faced Kessa. "Daughter of Edric Lorn," it said. Kessa went cold. No one in the wolf court had spoken her father's name with honor in 9 years. They used it like a stain, never like a man. "Do not call him that," Bellerin snapped. The raven figure ignored him. "You stand at the old crossing. You have been named tribute, debt, orphan, packless, and traitor's seed. Which name do you answer?" Kessa's throat tightened. The soldiers watched. Marek watched. The ravens watched without blinking. She understood, suddenly, why the throne had not completed itself. It was not waiting for her to sit. It was waiting to see whether she would crawl toward whatever name frightened her least. Her wrists hurt where the chains had been. Her father's memory hurt worse. She could have said Kessa. She could have said Lorn. She could have said nothing and let stronger powers decide what silence meant. Instead, she lifted her chin. "I answer the name they used to empty my bowl," she said. "Traitor's daughter." Bellerin smiled. Then Kessa finished. "But I never saw my father tried. I never saw his blood weighed. I never saw his grave opened. If the Raven Court wants that name from me, it will take the truth with it." The unfinished throne flared blue-black. Every raven on it opened one eye. Marek's shadow wolf lifted its head and looked at Kessa as if it had heard a command no human voice had given. The masked figure inclined its beak. Then the key turns once. Before Kessa could ask what that meant, the bridge changed. The treaty stones beneath the feathers lit with old carvings, not wolf claw or raven wing, but both together, a black feather crossing a silver fang. The symbol burned beneath Kessa's feet, then raced under the bridge toward the river. The water below stopped moving. Bellerin's smile vanished. From the river rose a column of black water, carrying fragments of shadow, wolf shadows, torn, frayed, half-drowned things that should have belonged to living bodies. They twisted in the air, thin as smoke, their mouths open in silent howls. The soldiers recoiled. Marek did not. His face went still, in a way that made Kessa's stomach tighten. He recognized them. Not all. Enough. The missing patrols, he said. Bellerin answered too fast. Raven illusion. One of the torn shadows drifted toward the bridge and pressed itself against Marek's boots. It was barely shaped, but when it lifted its head, Kessa saw the outline of a young wolf with one ear torn. Marek's hand opened again. This time, the pain on his face was unmistakable. Corin, he whispered. A name. A dead soldier, perhaps. Or not dead. Something worse. Bellerin's eyes sharpened. Majesty, do not speak to it. The shadow wolf at Marek's feet dissolved into black water. The raven figure spoke. The treaty did not break because a Lorn betrayed you. It broke because someone has been feeding wolf shadows to the river and blaming the Raven Court for hunger. The bridge erupted in shouts. Bellerin lifted both hands, treaty scroll flashing pale in the rain. Lies, corpse work, false grief dressed in stolen shapes. This is why the girl must be bound. She is the mouth they are using. The soldiers turned toward Kessa. Fear did what cruelty had not. It made them willing. Marek stepped once into their path. Not enough to claim her. Enough to delay them. His jaw was tight, his eyes dangerous. No blade touches her until I know whether that shadow wore my soldier's name by chance. Bellerin's expression darkened. That is protection, he said quietly, before acceptance, before refusal, before lawful transfer. Marek did not look away, then call it investigation. For one breath, no one moved. Then Bellerin drew the treaty knife from inside the scroll. Its blade was black on one edge, silver on the other. By emergency clause, he said, voice ringing, I demand blood test of the tribute before the bridge, the wolves, and the Raven Court. Kessa's broken chains jerked. The ravens hissed without sound. Marek turned sharply. Bellerin. But Bellerin was already moving. He seized Kessa's wrist before she could step back and cut a thin line across her palm. Pain flashed. Blood fell onto the black feathers at her feet. Not red. Not fully. In the rain, Kessa's blood spread dark as ink, threaded with a single silver line. The unfinished throne behind her completed one arm. Then, from the river below, every stolen wolf shadow turned its head toward Kessa and bowed. The wolf shadows bowed to Kessa's blood. Not like soldiers. Like starving creatures recognizing the only door left open. For one breath, no one on the treaty bridge moved. Rain tapped against swords, feathers, masks, and stone. The river below remained lifted in a black column, holding the torn shapes of stolen wolves in the air. Their bodies were thin as smoke, their jaws open in silent howls, their heads bent toward the ink-dark blood spilling from Kessa Lorn's palm. Kessa stared at them, sick with wonder. All her life, the wolf court had told her she carried disgrace. Packless blood, traitor's blood, blood no house would shelter, and no wolf would answer. Now the dead or stolen shadows answered it. That did not feel like triumph. It felt like a trial she had never agreed to stand inside. Lord Bellerin Vask recovered before anyone else. His white glove still held the black and silver treaty knife. Kessa's blood marked its edge. There is your proof, he called. Raven corruption in her veins. The tribute is not innocent. She is a planted key, bred to open wolf law from the inside. The soldiers shifted toward Kessa. The ravens behind her tightened into the unfinished throne, the left arm now complete, the back rising higher with every silent wing. Still, they did not force her to sit. They only waited, as if the empty seat had patience older than kingdoms. The masked raven figure turned its beak toward Bellerin. You cut her and blame the blood for speaking. Bellerin's smile was thin. Blood does not lie. No, the raven figure said. But men holding knives often do. A growl moved through the wolf ranks. Marek Solvarn stepped forward. Only one step. Treaty law stopped him as clearly as a chain. Kessa saw it in the set of his shoulders, in the way his hand opened at his side, and found nothing useful there. His shadow wolf had stretched halfway across the bridge toward the bowed shapes below. its frayed muzzle trembling over the broken chain at Kessa's feet. Belleran noticed the king's movement and lowered his voice. "Majesty, if you stand before her now, you stand before a lawful blood test." Merrick's eyes stayed on Kessa's bleeding hand. "You cut her, without my order. The emergency clause allows it. The emergency clause does not allow you to invent guilt before the wound closes." A small silence followed. It was not protection. Not enough. But it was the first time anyone on the bridge had questioned Belleran with power behind the words. Kessa hated that it mattered to her. She pressed her cut palm against her dress. The blood seeped through the gray cloth, black and silver in the rain. The raven figure faced her. "Daughter of Edric Lorn, the first turn has opened. The oath beneath the pact has heard you." "Then tell it to close again," Kessa said. Belleran laughed. "Afraid of your own miracle?" Kessa looked at him. "I am afraid of men who call every wound a miracle when they need blood from it." The ravens opened their beaks. No sound came, but Belleran's face tightened as if the silence had struck him. The river column shifted. One wolf shadow rose higher than the others and drifted toward Merrick. It had one torn ear and a broken front leg. When it reached the bridge, it pressed its thin muzzle against the stone near the king's boot. "Marek van Stil." "Corin," he whispered. The name broke something in the soldiers. A young captain made a strangled sound. Another man lowered his blade by an inch. Belleran moved sharply between them. "Illusion. Raven, grief, work. They know the names of our missing." The raven figure said, "Because their shadows came to us screaming." Merrick's shadow wolf snapped its head toward Belleran. For the first time, the treaty keeper looked less certain of the creature than of the king. Kessa saw the truth beneath the argument. Belleran was not confused by the river. He was angry that it had risen before he controlled the story. He lifted the treaty scroll again. "If she is a blood key, then let law decide what she opens." The masked figure's body went rigid. "Do not cut the bridge." Belleran's eyes flashed. "There." A warning he had wanted. Before Merrick could move, Belleran turned and drove the treaty knife into the old stone at Kessa's feet. The bridge screamed. Not stone. Something under stone. The black feathers beneath Kessa rippled backward. The carving of wolf fang and raven wing split down the center, and a dark line shot from the knife through her spilled blood, across the bridge, straight into Merrick's shadow wolf. The wolf convulsed. Marek dropped to one knee. One hand clamped over his chest as if the blade had entered him instead of the bridge. The soldiers shouted. The ravens rose in a storm but did not fly away. Below, the stolen wolf shadows were pulled upward by the split oath, twisting into one another like smoke caught in a drain. Their silent howls struck Kessa's bones. The unfinished raven throne surged behind her, no longer gentle, its feathers lifting like a warning crown. Belleran gripped the knife with both hands. "Open then. Show us what debt the traitor's blood carries." Kessa understood suddenly. He did not fear the oath. He wanted it torn open too fast. If the hidden law broke in chaos, he could blame her, blame the Raven Court, and bury whatever truth rose with the shadows. Merrick lifted his head with effort. His amber eyes found hers through the rain. "Do not let him finish the cut," he said. Belleran twisted the knife. Merrick's shadow wolf split at the shoulder. Kessa moved. For 9 years, the Wolf Court had taught her that a traitor's daughter must never touch sacred law. For 9 years, she had survived by keeping her hands clean of every noble thing that could be used against her. Now, sacred law was killing the only wolf on the bridge that had looked at her chains with grief. Kessa stepped into the split oath and wrapped her bleeding hand around the treaty blade. The knife stopped. The river went black. And from beneath the bridge, a raven voice whispered her father's name. The raven voice beneath the bridge said her father's name as if it had been waiting 9 years for someone with blood enough to hear it. Edric Lorn. Kessa's hand tightened around the treaty blade. The knife should have cut deeper. It should have opened her palm to bone. Instead, the black and silver edge froze inside her grip, held between her blood and the split oath. The river below went so dark that even the rain vanished when it touched the surface. Lord Belleran stared at her hand. For the first time since the bridge began to break, he looked truly afraid. "Let go," he said. Kessa almost did. Pain burned through her wrist, up her arm, into her chest. The treaty knife was not merely metal, it was law sharpened into a weapon. It wanted obedience from the blood touching it. It wanted her to remove her hand, lower her eyes, and accept the shape other people had given her life. Packless. Tribute. Traitor's daughter. The voice beneath the bridge whispered again. Daughter. Not accusation. Claim. Kessa sucked in a broken breath. Marek Solvarn remained on one knee across from her, his shadow wolf split at the shoulder and pinned by the dark line running from the knife. He was breathing through his teeth, one hand pressed to his chest. His soldiers looked between their king and the girl they had been ordered not to protect. Do not release it, Marek said. Bellerin turned on him. Majesty, she is holding the cut open. She is stopping you from widening it. That thing beneath the bridge is speaking through her. Kessa looked at Bellerin. It said my father's name. Your father broke this treaty. The voice under the bridge answered before she could. No. The word rose through the stones, through the ravens, through the torn wolf shadows circling above the river. It was not loud. It did not need to be. Every living creature on the bridge felt it in the joints. The masked, raven figure stepped closer to Kessa, but did not touch her. Ask the oath what he was. Bellerin's face hardened. No, that was enough. Kessa turned her bleeding palm slightly around the blade. The bridge shuddered. The black feathers beneath her feet spread into a circle. Within it, old marks appeared. Not words, but images cut in light. A wolf standing at a border gate. A raven perched above it. Between them, a man with one hand raised, holding neither sword nor crown. Kessa recognized him before the face fully formed. Her father had been thinner in memory, warmer in smile, alive in all the ways grief blurred. But the shape rising from the stone carried his shoulders, his worn cloak, the scar across his thumb from cutting bridle leather for her when she was small. Edric Lorn appeared in the broken oath as a figure made of river shadow and raven light. Kessa forgot the pain. Father, she whispered. The bridge held its breath. The shadow did not smile. It looked too wounded for that. Its throat was marked black, as if ink had been poured down it. Around one wrist hung a torn treaty ribbon. Then it raised its hand toward Kessa. Not to touch, to warn. Do not pull the knife free, the shadow said. Its voice rasped like feathers dragged over stone. Turn it back. Bellerin lunged. Marek moved at the same time. The king could not reach Bellerin before the treaty keeper reached Kessa, but his shadow wolf could. Torn shoulder and all, it snapped across the stones and caught Bellerin's sleeve in its jaws. Cloth ripped. Bellerin staggered back with a curse, and every soldier saw the black stain blooming beneath his white glove. Raven ink. Bellerin clamped his hand shut, too late. The masked figure spoke softly. Now there is a thing worth explaining. Bellerin's eyes burned. Old treaty ink. Every keeper carries it. Edric's shadow turned toward him. Not under the skin. Marek's gaze sharpened despite the pain. Bellerin. The name was not a question. Bellerin's control cracked by one thin line. You are listening to a dead traitor and a court of carrion masks while your wolf bleeds into the bridge. Kessa felt the knife pulse. Turn it back. She did not know what that meant. Then she saw the carvings under her blood. The knife had been driven downward, splitting the old mark of fang and feather. If she twisted it one way, the cut would open wider. If she twisted it the other, the blade would face Bellerin's side of the treaty mark. Her hand shook. Bellerin saw the movement. Girl, if you turn that knife, you accuse wolf law before the Raven Court. Kessa looked at him. For 9 years, she had carried the punishment of an accusation no one proved. Her father had died beneath a feather-black tree, while men like Bellerin built their authority from his disgrace. Her voice came out quiet. Then Wolflaw can answer. She turned the blade. The bridge screamed again. But this time the dark line did not run into Marek's shadow wolf. It ran backward through the treaty scroll in Bellorin's hand. The scroll burst open. Not burning, bleeding ink. Names poured across the parchment, appearing where blank spaces had been hidden under lawful seals. Missing patrols, border scouts, raven witnesses, children born without shadows. Wolves recorded as dead before their bodies were found. Marek rose slowly, pain and fury pulling him to his feet. Bellerin stepped back. The ravens behind Kessa completed the second arm of the living throne. Edric's shadow looked at his daughter one last time. The first theft was not raven, he said. It wore a wolf seal. Then the treaty scroll split down the middle, and from inside it fell a black feather wrapped around a silver wolf tooth. The black feather and silver wolf tooth hit the bridge between them. No one touched either piece. Still, every wolf on the bridge flinched. The tooth rolled once across the wet stone, leaving a thin silver mark behind it. The feather did not move at all. Rain struck it and vanished, swallowed into the black barbs, as if the thing had been cut from a knife that did not allow water to fall through. Kessa kept her bleeding hand around the treaty knife. The blade had stopped screaming, but the bridge had not healed. A dark split ran through the old carving of fang and feather. On one side, the living ravens held their unfinished throne behind her. On the other, Marek Solvarn stood with pain locked behind his storm-amber eyes, his shadow wolf trembling at his feet with its shoulder torn open. Lord Bellerin stared at the fallen feather and tooth. Then he smiled. It was a small smile, but Kessa saw it. So did Marek. Explain, the Alpha King said. Bellerin bowed his head, as if the command pleased him. Raven theft token. Feather for the carrion court. Tooth for the wolf, it means to consume. Your Majesty, the evidence has fallen from the corrupted scroll itself. The masked raven figure gave a soundless hiss. You name a trap evidence because you placed it where it would fall. Bellerin's eyes sharpened. Careful, the Raven Court has just admitted the object is a trap. I admitted no such thing. You knew its use. So did the man hiding ink under his skin. The soldiers looked at Bellerin's gloved hand. He drew it closer to his side. Kessa watched the black stain spread at his wrist, thin as veins. Marek took one step toward the tooth. The object reacted before his boot crossed the silver mark. His shadow wolf jerked as if hooked by the throat. The torn wolf shadows above the river twisted toward the tooth, pulled by hunger that was not their own. Marek's jaw clenched, and his hand pressed briefly against his ribs. Kessa did not think. She turned the treaty knife a fraction. The dark pull loosened. Marek looked at her. For one moment the bridge narrowed to that look. The king who had sold her, the girl who had stopped his wolf from being dragged apart, and every law between them still wet with her blood. Bellerin saw it, and struck. You see? He cried. She controls the debt. She controls your shadow. A packless girl holds the Alpha King by the throat, and the Raven Court calls it oath. The word spread quickly among frightened men. A few soldiers lifted their blades again. Kessa almost laughed from exhaustion. Yesterday, no one had believed she could carry a basket without spilling grain. Now they believed she could command a king's soul because Bellerin needed them afraid. The masked raven figure stepped to the feather and tooth. This is not a crown sign. It is a stripping charm, a wolf tooth to name the victim, a raven feather to blame the hunger. Whoever binds both can pull a wolf shadow across the treaty line and leave the body breathing behind it. Marek went still. His voice lowered. My missing patrols. The raven figure inclined its beak. Taken alive, it said. Emptied slowly. Sent to us as accusation. A young captain made a broken sound. Corin was alive? The river answered with a silent rise of torn shadows. Bellerin snapped. Do not listen to carrion theater. Marek turned on him. You will be silent. The bridge changed when he said it. Not because the ravens obeyed. Because the wolves did. Every soldier froze, even Bellerin's mouth closed, though fury burned behind his eyes. Kessa saw the cost of that command in Marek's face. His shadow wolf was bleeding darkness into the bridge, and still he held his court by the throat with nothing but voice and will. The raven figure faced Kessa. The knife must be removed before the charm feeds again. Kessa looked at the blade in her hand. If I pull it free, does the oath close? No. Then what happens? The cut follows the blood that opened it. Her stomach turned cold. My blood. Yes. Marek's expression hardened. Meaning? The raven figure answered without softness. If she remains on Wolfstone, the cut remains under your king. If she crosses to Ravenstone, the oath follows her away from him. Marek looked at Kessa sharply. No, he said. The word came too fast. Too raw. Bellerin's eyes lit with triumph. Majesty. Marek ignored him. Kessa did not. She heard the trap, waiting in that single word. If Marek refused to let her cross, Bellerin would call it protection. Claim. Weakness. A king placing a packless traitor's daughter above treaty law. If Marek ordered her to cross, He would be selling her again. There was no clean road for him. So Kessa chose before either man could make her into another sentence. She loosened her grip on the knife, then caught the hilt with both hands. Pain flashed up her arm. Marek stepped toward her. Kessa. It was the first time he had said her name. Not traitor's daughter. Not tribute. Her name. It nearly undid her. But the shadow wolf at his feet shuddered, and the tooth on the stone dragged itself another inch toward his darkness. Kessa pulled the treaty knife free. The bridge split, followed her blood. Ravens lifted from the throne in a black rush, not abandoning it, but opening a path behind her. The unfinished seat remained, high-backed and waiting, its edges alive with blue-black fire. Beloren shouted, "Stop her!" No soldier moved. Marek did not command them to stop her. He did not command them to let her go either. He stood in the rain, caught between throne, treaty, and the first woman to look at his dying shadow without fear. Kessa stepped over the broken treaty line. The moment her boot touched Raven's stone, the dark cut tore away from Marek's wolf and snapped beneath her feet instead. Pain drove her to one knee. The ravens closed around her, wings half open, shielding but not touching. Across the bridge, Marek's shadow wolf gasped, as if air had finally reached its lungs. Kessa looked up at the masked figure. "I crossed," she said through clenched teeth. "Now tell me what the oath wants." The raven figure knelt before her, not bowing, not worshipping, but bringing its beaked mask level with her eyes. "The oath wants the truth your father died carrying." Behind Kessa, the unfinished raven throne completed its back, and from its living feathers came Kessa Lorn's voice, weaker now, but clear. "Beloren did not kill me alone." Kessa Lorn's voice came from the unfinished throne, like a memory pulled through wet feathers. "Beloren did not kill me alone." The bridge changed after those words. On the wolf side, soldiers turned toward their treaty keeper with fear sharpened into suspicion. On the raven side, the masked court went still in a way even the birds seemed to obey. Kessa knelt on the black stone, one hand bleeding around the treaty knife, the other pressed against the ground as the split oath burned beneath her. She had crossed to save Marek's shadow wolf. Now she was trapped on the wrong side of every law she had ever known. Beloren recovered with terrifying speed. A dead traitor names enemies easily. Marek Solvarn stood at the broken line between Wolfstone and Ravenstone. His shadow wolf had stopped tearing apart, but its shoulder remained split, darkness dripping from it like smoke. The king's gaze moved from Kessa to the living throne behind her. "Let him speak," Marek said. Beloren's eyes narrowed. "You would take testimony from a corpse?" "I would take testimony from the man whose death built half your power." The blow landed. Beloren's mouth tightened. Behind Kessa, the ravens forming the throne shifted, opening a dark hollow in the backrest. Within it, Edric's shadow flickered into shape again, weaker than before. His throat still bore the black mark of forced raven ink. Kessa wanted to reach for him. She did not. He was not truly there. She knew enough about cruelty to recognize when hope came with teeth. "Who helped him?" she asked. Edric's shadow turned toward the raven court. A slow unease moved through the masked figures. The raven guide beside Kessa lowered its beaked head. "Careful, Lornshade." Edric's voice rasped. There was a raven hand on the bargain. The ravens exploded upward. Not all. Only those on the dead trees behind the court, a great black shiver against the storm sky. The living throne held its shape behind Kessa, but she felt it tremble through the stone. Beloren lifted his chin with sudden satisfaction. There, even their own dead fear naming it. Kessa looked at the raven guide. "You knew?" The mask turned toward her. "We suspected rot." "That is not an answer." "No," it said. "It is the safest truth I can give you while knives are awake." Kessa almost laughed. Safe truth. The kind of truth courts gave girls they had already spent. Marek's voice cut across the bridge. "Name the raven hand." Edric tried. His mouth opened. Black ink poured from his throat instead of words. Kessa lurched forward. "Father." The shadow bent as if choking. The living throne tightened behind her, thousands of wings folding inward. A thin thread of black ink rose from Edric's throat and stretched not toward Beloran, but deeper into the raven court. Toward a figure standing behind the others. Until that moment, Kessa had not noticed it. One raven mask among many. Too still, too clean. Its cloak was not wet from the rain. The Raven Guide saw where Kessa looked and went rigid. Bellerin smiled. The hidden figure lifted one hand. Edric's shadow collapsed into the throne with a sound like feathers crushed under stone. Kessa rose too fast, pain flashing through her knees. "Bring him back." The hidden raven spoke at last. Its voice was soft, elegant, almost kind. Some dead are kinder when silent. The Raven Guide stepped between Kessa and the figure. Lord Khyven. So the name arrived like a blade. Lord Khyven of the Raven Court. Kessa filed it away because fear had taught her memory was sometimes the only weapon allowed to the powerless. Merrick's shadow wolf growled across the treaty line. Bellerin raised his treaty scroll, torn and bleeding ink. "Majesty, do you see now? Raven faction against Raven faction. Corpse testimony, stolen shadows. If she crosses farther, you will never get her back." Kessa heard the shape of it. Not concern. Ownership, disguised as warning. Merrick heard it too, but treaty law still lay between them. If he crossed without acceptance, the war Bellerin wanted would begin under his name. The Raven Guide turned to Kessa. "You must enter the court proper." "No." The answer came from Merrick. Too sharp, too immediate. Everyone heard it. Kessa looked across the broken line at him. Rain ran down his face. His jaw was hard, but his eyes were not cold now. They were furious at every road available. The Raven Guide said, "If she remains on the bridge, Khyven can silence the shade again. Inside the Court of Perches, the old oath has walls." Bellerin laughed. "A cage with prettier feathers." Kessa looked at the unfinished throne behind her. Its back was complete now, its arms formed, but the seat remained empty, a dark space waiting for a choice she did not understand. She did not trust the Raven Court. She did not trust the Wolf Court, but she trusted the way Bellerin feared her moving where he could not reach. Kessa lifted the treaty knife. The ravens around her bowed their heads not to her, but to the blade made honest by blood. She met Merrick's gaze across the split bridge. "I am not going because they own me," she said. His expression changed, almost imperceptibly. "I know." The words were quiet. Not enough to save her. Enough to follow her into memory. Kessa turned from the bridge and walked toward the Raven Court. The living throne moved behind her, not carrying her, not crowning her, but unfolding like a shadowed door. At the edge of the black trees, Lord Khyven's dry cloak stirred for the first time. Then Kessa saw what hung beneath it. A chain of silver wolf teeth, fresh ones, and one of them still held a thread of Merrick's shadow. The silver tooth beneath Lord Khyven's cloak was not fully dead. Kessa saw it twitch on its chain. A thin strip of darkness clung to the root, frayed and trembling like torn cloth caught on a nail. Across the broken treaty line, Merrick Solvarn's shadow wolf jerked, as if something had pulled its spine. Kessa stopped at the edge of the black trees. The Raven Court waited beneath branches crowded with silent birds. Their masks faced her, hundreds of long beaks shining with rain. Behind her, the living throne moved without feet, unfolding feather by feather as if the ravens carried not a chair, but a doorway made from bodies and old vows. Lord Khyven stood apart from the others. His cloak was dry. That detail made Kessa colder than the rain. Every person on the bridge had been marked by storm. Wolf soldiers, raven masks, Marek himself, even Bellerin's white gloves had darkened at the seams. But Khyven looked untouched, as though weather had been told not to reach him. The chain under his cloak shifted again. Wolf teeth clicked softly together. Marek's voice came from the bridge, rough with restraint. "Kessa." She did not turn fully. If she did, she might go back. If she went back, Bellerin would win another name for her. Frightened, false, controlled. So she kept her eyes on Khyven. That tooth is his. The Raven Guide beside her went still. Khyven smiled behind his mask. Kessa could hear it in his voice. "Many wolves have teeth, little key. Not many shadows answer when one moves." Across the bridge, Merrick's shadow wolf snarled, then staggered. Its torn shoulder bled black smoke across the stones. The wolf soldiers saw it. So did Bellerin. The treaty keeper's face tightened, but not with surprise. Kessa caught that. "You knew," she said. Bellerin lifted his chin. "I know the cost of keeping a kingdom alive." Merrick turned his head slowly toward him. The storm seemed to gather around the king's silence. Khyven lifted one gloved hand. "Careful, Alpha King." Cross Ravenstone without acceptance, and your soldiers will be carrying war home before midnight. Merrick's jaw clenched. He did not cross. His shadow wolf tried. The creature pushed one forepaw over the broken line, and the treaty stones burned white. Marek flinched, but he did not call it back. That small refusal struck Kessa harder than a vow. He could not come for her, but he would not command the part of himself that wanted to. The Raven Guide leaned closer. Inside the Court of Perches, words cannot be hidden if the blood key opens the lower oath. That is why Khyven fears your step. Then why invite me in? Because he thinks fear will make you sit before you understand what the seat costs. Kessa looked at the living throne. Its back was complete, its arms curved like folded wings. The seat remained empty, dark, and waiting. Again with the throne, she said. Everyone keeps saying I am not queen, then brings a throne to my heels. The Raven Guide's mask tilted slightly. A throne is not always a crown. Sometimes it is a witness stand no one survives leaving unchanged. Khyven laughed softly. Pretty warnings from a court that lost its spine. He drew the chain fully from beneath his cloak. The wolf teeth shone silver white in the rainless dark around him. Some were old, some were fresh. One still had blood darkening the root. Another held a thread of gray shadow. The last tooth, larger than the rest, carried a strip of blackness that twisted toward Marek like a wounded snake. Kessa's stomach turned. How many? She asked. Khyven spread the chain between both hands. Enough to prove wolves are not the only kingdom that knows hunger. The ravens above hissed without sound. The guide spoke sharply. You fed on treaty shadows. I preserved leverage, Khyven said. The wolves send soldiers to the border. Bellaran sends names. I take enough shadow to weaken the eager ones before they become armies. Peace is ugly when cowards refuse to keep it clean. Bellaran snapped. You speak too freely. Khyven turned his mask toward the bridge. And you hide too poorly. There it was. Not loyalty. A bargain between men who both believed theft became wisdom when named survival. Merrick's voice cut through the rain. Bellaran. The treaty keeper did not answer. Kessa felt the oath under her feet begin to pulse again. The treaty knife in her hand warmed, drinking the blood drying along her palm. The living throne shifted behind her, lowering its empty seat. Khyven saw it and stepped closer. Sit, blood key. Open the oath properly. Let Wolf and Raven see what your traitor father carried. Kessa did not move. Khyven lifted Merrick's tooth. Across the bridge, the king's shadow wolf collapsed to one knee. Merrick staggered, but stayed upright, fury blazing through pain. Kessa, he said again. Not command. Warning. Maybe apology. Khyven's voice softened. If you refuse, I pull the rest of him through the tooth. If you sit, perhaps the throne chooses mercy. Kessa looked at the ravens forming the seat. They did not beckon. They waited. That was the only reason she trusted them more than Khyven. Her father's voice had said Bellaran did not kill him alone. Now she knew one hand belonged to the Raven Court, but another truth had opened with it. Both courts had used fear to keep old crimes alive. Kessa stepped toward the throne. Merrick's shadow wolf lifted its head with a broken growl. Bellaran shouted something from the bridge, but the ravens swallowed his words. Kessa stopped before the empty seat and turned to Khyven. No, she said. Khyven went still. No? I will not sit because you threaten him. She raised the treaty knife and drove its point into the black stone before the throne. I will stand. The Court of Perches trembled. The living throne opened beneath her feet instead of behind her. And from the darkness under the seat, a chained wolf voice whispered, At last. The chained voice under the throne did not sound dead. That was what frightened Kessa first. It sounded tired, old, wounded, and waiting beneath too many years of feathers and stone. The living raven throne opened at her feet, not downward like a pit, but inward like a secret taking breath. Black feathers folded away from one another, revealing a hollow space beneath the empty seat. Inside, where wood or bone should have supported a throne, there hung a wolf shadow bound in silver-threaded chains. Not Merrick's shadow wolf. This one was larger, older, and dimmed almost beyond shape. Its head hung low. Its ribs were circled in raven-black cords. One wing of shadow spread from its left shoulder, not a bird's wing, not fully, but something made from an ancient bargain between two creatures that should never have shared a body, and yet once had. The court of perches recoiled. Even the ravens forming the throne trembled. Lord Kyvan's mask tilted toward the hollow. "Close it." No one moved. Kessa looked at the chained wolf shadow. "What are you?" The creature lifted its head with terrible effort. "Not what," it whispered. "Who was promised?" Across the broken treaty line, Marek Solvarn stood with his own shadow wolf trembling at his feet. The king's face had gone still, but Kessa saw the shock in him. The chained shape beneath the throne had something of his wolf in it, not face, not body, but blood memory, a root beneath the root. Bellerin saw the recognition and snapped, "Raven trickery." Cavan answered before the Raven Guide could. "For once, treaty keeper, be silent before your fear teaches the court too much." That confirmed more than denial would have. Kessa tightened her grip on the treaty knife. "You both knew this was here." The Raven Guide beside her bowed its head, shame passing through the small movement. "We knew a binding lay beneath the throne. We did not know," he still spoke. The chained wolf shadow gave a sound that might once have been a laugh. Courts forget what they bury when the buried learn silence. Marek's voice crossed the bridge. "Name yourself." The chained wolf turned its dim eyes toward him. "Vailor Solvarn," it said. A ripple passed through the wolf soldiers. Marek did not move, but something in his face changed. Kessa looked at him. "Who is that?" Marek's answer came slowly. "The first king who crossed the Raven Treaty alive." Bellerin's voice hardened. "A legend used to frighten children from border trees." The chained wolf shadow lifted its head higher. "A king used to feed them." The words struck the court of perches like a blade sliding between ribs. Kessa understood in fragments. Vailor Solvarn had not died into history cleanly. Some part of his wolf had been bound beneath the Raven throne. Not as prisoner only. Not at first. As pledge. As bridge. As proof that wolf and raven could share one oath without devouring each other. Then men like Bellerin and Cavan had found a way to use the pledge as a drain. A wolf tooth. A raven feather. A name written in treaty ink. Pull shadow across the old bridge. Leave the body breathing. Blame the hunger on the enemy court. Kessa's stomach turned. "How many?" she asked. Vailor's chained head lowered. "Too many to count without becoming cruel." Kyvan stepped closer, wolf-tooth chain hanging from his hand. "Enough. This changes nothing. The old wolf is a foundation, not a witness." The throne ravens hissed without sound. Kessa looked at the empty seat above the chained wolf. "You wanted me to sit on him." Kyvan's stillness answered. Bellerin spoke quickly. "He wanted you enthroned, girl. Do not pretend outrage at being raised." "No," Kessa said. "He wanted me plugged into the wound." The Raven Guide turned toward her sharply. Kessa felt the truth settle as she said it. If she sat before understanding, the throne would use her blood key to open the lower oath. Cavan could guide the opening. Bellerin could blame the result. Wolf shadows would pour through her, and whatever remained of Vailor would either wake as a weapon or die as evidence. She was not being crowned. She was being made into a door others could force open. Marek's shadow wolf growled low. Marek himself took one step toward the Raven side. The treaty stones flashed warning white beneath his boot. Kessa turned toward him. "Don't!" His jaw clenched. "He has my wolf's tooth. And if you cross now, they get war too." The words hurt him. Good. They hurt her as well. That made them true enough. Kyvan lifted the largest tooth on his chain. Marek's shadow wolf jerked, and a thread of darkness tore from its shoulder toward Kyvan's hand. Kessa moved before fear could make her clever. She did not sit. She stepped down into the opened space beneath the throne. The ravens shrieked silently. The guide reached for her and stopped. Marek's voice cut across the bridge, rough and furious. "Kessa." She did not look back this time. The hollow beneath the throne was cold enough to burn. Silver chains brushed her skirt. Vailor's enormous shadowed head lowered until one dim eye was level with hers. "You are Lorn blood," he whispered. "I am tired of blood being everyone's answer." The old wolf watched her. Then, slowly, it bowed its chained head. "Good." Kessa lifted the treaty knife and pressed its point not into the wolf, not into the throne, but into the chain-binding feather to fang. Cavan shouted, "Stop her!" Bellerin shouted with him. For the first time, both courts sounded the same. "Kessakat." The silver-threaded chain snapped. Valor's bound wing opened halfway, and a rush of stolen wolf shadows burst from beneath the throne, not into Caven's charm, not into Belleran's scroll, but around Kessa like a storm recognizing a center. Merrick's shadow wolf threw back its head and howled. This time sound came. Across the river, every raven screamed in answer. And on Kessa's wrist, where her blood had dried black and silver, a mark appeared. A raven wing crossing a wolf fang beneath a crown made of open doors. The mark on Kessa's wrist did not feel like a crown. It felt like a door opening under skin. A raven wing crossed a wolf fang, and beneath them, a small black crown broke apart into 3 open gates. The lines burned dark silver, bright enough for every mask, soldier, raven, and wolf shadow to see. The stolen shadows circled her beneath the living throne, hundreds of torn wolf shapes moving through feather and moonless air. They did not touch her, they did not bow. They waited around her the way starving creatures wait before a closed house, afraid the hand at the door might vanish. Valor Solvarn's chained wing remained half open above her. "You are not crowned," the old wolf, Shadow whispered. "You are witnessed." Kessa looked up at him. "What does that mean?" "It means both courts lied where your blood can hear." Before she could answer, Khyven struck. The Raven Lord tore a black pin from beneath his cloak and drove it into the living throne. The ravens screamed. This time the sound broke through the silent court, sharp and terrible, scattering through the trees like glass. The throne convulsed around Kessa. Merrick shouted her name from the bridge. Kessa gripped the broken chain beside Valor to keep from falling. Above, the Raven Guide lunged toward Khyven, but 3 masked figures blocked the path. Not all the Raven Court served Khyven then, but enough did. Belleran seized the moment on the wolf side. "There is your proof. The mark wakes rebellion in both courts. Kill the key before the door opens wider." Several soldiers turned toward Kessa. Merrick moved first. He crossed the broken treaty line. White fire rose from the bridge stones around his boots. His shadow wolf snarled in agony, but the king did not step back. The treaty burned him for crossing before formal acceptance, before debt was settled, before any court had given him permission to stand where Kessa stood. Still, he crossed. Belleran's face went pale with triumph. "Witness, the Alpha King breaks treaty for a marked traitor." Marek's voice cut through the storm. "No." He took another step, smoke rising from the soles of his boots. "I break no treaty. I answer the oath beneath it." The old stones dimmed beneath him, only slightly. Enough. The Raven Guide turned its mask toward Merrick. "Name your standing, Wolf King." Merrick's jaw tightened. Kessa saw the danger. If he named himself her protector, Belleran would call it claim. If he named himself her buyer, the Raven Court would close around her. If he named himself judge, both courts would demand blood. Merrick looked at Kessa, not at the throne, not at the mark, not at the shadows. "I stand as the man whose wolf was being stolen," he said, "and as the king who sold the wrong girl for the wrong crime." The bridge went silent. Kessa felt the words hit her harder than rescue. He had not made himself innocent. Good. She had no use for a man who could only protect her by pretending he had never harmed her. Belleran's voice sharpened. "Confession will not save her. It was not meant to." Merrick reached the edge of the opened throne hollow, but did not descend. He held out one hand, not commanding, asking. Kessa looked at it, then at the tooth chain in Khyven's hand. The largest tooth still carried a strip of Merrick's shadow. It twisted, drawn toward the king but unable to return while Khyven held the charm. Valor's old voice rasped above her. "Raven, Luna blood does not rule wolves. It does not rule ravens. It binds witness to return. If you command the stolen shadows, you become another thief. If you release them without names, they scatter and die." Kessa understood. Almost. The mark was not a weapon. It was a responsibility shaped like one. "How do I return them?" Valor lowered his chained head. "Name the thieves, name the stolen. Open the gate between body and shadow." Khyven laughed. "She does not know the names." Kessa looked at the circling shadows. No, she did not. But someone did. She turned toward the wolf soldiers on the bridge. "Call them." No one moved. Kessa's voice rose, not loud but fierce. "If these are your brothers, your captains, your sons, call them by name." The young captain who had reacted to Corin stepped forward first. His sword trembled in his hand. "Corin Vale," he said. One torn wolf shadow broke from the circling storm. It turned toward him, ears lifting. Another soldier swallowed. "Hath Marrow." Another voice, "Jorik of East Pine." Then another. Then many. Names crossed the bridge like thrown ropes. With every name, one shadow steadied. The mark on Kessa's wrist burned hotter, but the pain felt cleaner now, less like a knife and more like a door forced open after rust. Khyven's charm chain began to shake. Beleren shouted, "Silence!" No one obeyed. Marek's shadow wolf rose behind him, wounded but larger now. It fixed its silver-black gaze on Beleren. Kessa lifted the treaty knife. "Lord Beleren Vask, treaty, keeper of the wolf court, you sent names across the border to be stripped." Beleren stepped back. She turned the blade toward the dry-cloaked raven. "Lord Khaven of the Raven Court, you took the shadows and fed the theft beneath the throne." Khaven's mask cracked down one side. Kessa faced both courts. "I name you thieves before the oath beneath the pact." The mark on her wrist opened like an eye. The stolen shadows surged not toward Kessa, but through her, past her, into the names calling from the bridge. One by one, they flew back to living bodies or collapsed into the hands of those who mourned them. Soldiers fell to their knees. Some sobbed, some howled, some simply stared as their shadows returned whole for the first time in months. Khaven ripped the largest tooth from his chain. Merrick gasped as his shadow wolf buckled. "If I cannot keep the king's shadow," Khaven said, "I can kill it before she returns it." He crushed the tooth in his fist. Kessa felt Marek's shadow tear. The world narrowed to his wolf's silent cry. Then Marek stepped down into the throne hollow with her and placed his bleeding hand over hers on the treaty knife. "Name me," he said. Kessa stared at him. His eyes held hers, bright with pain, and something far more dangerous than trust. "Before both courts," he said, "return what they took." "Name me," Marek said. His bleeding hand closed over Kessa's on the treaty knife, warm against the cold metal, steady despite the way his shadow wolf tore apart beside him. Above them, Valor Solvarn's chained shape lifted its head beneath the living throne. Around them, stolen wolf shadows circled in a storm of broken backs, torn ears, missing paws, and silent mouths waiting for names. Kessa stared at Marek, the king who had sold her, the man who had crossed burning treaty stone to stand beside her. Both truths stood in him at once. That mattered. If she named only his guilt, she would make herself another blade. If she named only his courage, she would make herself another liar. So Kessa tightened her hand around the treaty knife and spoke clearly enough for both courts to hear. "Marek Solvarn," she said, "Alpha King of the Wolf Kingdom, seller of unlawful tribute, witness to stolen shadows, wounded heir of a broken oath, not innocent." His jaw flexed. He did not look away. Kessa's voice steadied. "Not the thief." The mark on her wrist opened. Raven wing, wolf fang, 3 black gates. The crushed tooth in Khyven's hand burst into silver dust. Marek's shadow wolf threw back its head, and the torn strip of darkness ripped free from Khyven's grasp. It flew across the hollow and struck the wolf's chest like a returning heart. Marek Stegel. Kessa caught his wrist before he fell. For one breath, his shadow wolf stood whole behind him, still scarred, still furious, but no longer frayed. Its silver-black eyes fixed on Khaven, then Beleren. The wolf soldiers saw. The Raven Court saw. No one could call it corpse theater now. Khaven stepped back, his cracked mask trembling. "The key has been influenced." Kessa turned toward him. "Lord Khaven of the Raven Court, keeper of dry cloaks in rain, collector of wolf teeth. You called theft peace because you feared wolves more than you honored the oath." The ravens above him opened their wings. Khyven's voice sharpened. "I kept war from crossing the river, by feeding it shadows until it grew teeth in secret." The mark flared. Every wolf tooth on Khyven's chain split open. Shadows flew from them, some strong enough to return across the bridge, some so thin they dissolved into the hands of soldiers who whispered names through tears. The raven masks around Khyven pulled away from him one by one. Not fleeing, refusing cover. Beleren moved, while everyone watched Khyven. He lunged for Kessa with the torn treaty scroll twisted around his fist, its bleeding ink hardening into a black spike. Marek turned, but Kessa moved first. She did not raise the treaty knife to kill him. She held it flat. Witness, not execution. Belleran's ink spike struck the blade and shattered. Black drops splashed across his white gloves and crawled up his wrists like exposed veins. Kessa named him Lord Belleran Vask, treaty keeper, seller of names. You sent wolf patrols to Caven and called their disappearance Raven Hunger. You made my father a traitor because he found the bargain. Belleran's face twisted. Your father would have broken the kingdom open. Edric Lorn's shadow rose behind the throne, one last time, thin but clear. No, her father said. I would have opened the ledger. The treaty scroll tore itself from Belleran's hand. Names poured out. Not ink now. Voices. Corin Vale, Hath Marrow, Jorik of East Pine, Border Scouts, Raven Witnesses, wolf children born with dim shadows, men marked dead while still breathing in hidden cells, women blamed for vanished mates. Every name Belleran had buried beneath treaty language rose into the rain and hung there, bright as judgment. The wolf soldiers turned on him. Belleran backed away, but Marek's restored shadow wolf blocked the path. On the raven side, Khyven tried to vanish into the black trees. The living ravens dropped from the throne in a single wave, surrounding him without touching. The raven guide removed its own mask, revealing an older woman's face lined by grief and fury. No more masks for rot, she said. Khyven's mask cracked fully and fell. Beneath it was not a monster, only a man, pale and afraid of the war he had helped create. That made the damage worse. Valor Solvern's chained wing opened wider beneath the throne. The old wolf shadow looked at Kessa. Bloodkey, the oath is open. Choose its price. The bridge went silent again. Kessa understood the danger in that silence. Both courts were waiting for punishment. Blood for blood, tooth for tooth. A clean ending that would let them pretend the crime belonged only to two men. She looked at Belleran, then Khyven, then Marek. Finally, she looked at the stolen shadows, still circling, not yet returned because no one had spoken their names. The price is witness, Kessa said. Every name read, every shadow returned where body lives, every dead named honestly, every family told who sold them, no tribute taken in place of guilt again. Belleran laughed once, broken and bitter. That is not justice. That is humiliation without end. Kessa looked at him. Yes. The old oath accepted. The treaty knife dissolved from her hand into black and silver light. The mark on her wrist cooled, but did not vanish. Above the bridge, the living ravens rose and scattered across both sides of the river, carrying names in their silence. Beneath the throne, Valor's chains broke one by one, until only a single silver link remained around his throat. Marek stepped forward and snapped it with his bare hand. The old wolf shadow bowed its head to him, then to Kessa, not as queen of a man. As the one who had opened the door, dawn began at the edge of the river, pale and slow. Belleran was taken by his own soldiers. Caven was bound by the Raven Court without mask or title. Neither died on the bridge. Kessa wanted them living long enough to hear every name they had made vanish. When the first light touched the treaty stones, Marek faced both courts. No girl will be sold as debt under my seal again, he said. No packless child will be made lawful emptiness because a court needs somewhere to hide its shame. The treaty will be rewritten before witnesses from both sides. Then he turned to Kessa, not claiming, not commanding, waiting. That was the first honorable thing he had given her. I cannot undo the bridge, he said quietly. No, Kessa answered. You cannot. His throat moved. Will you return to the wolf court? The old Kessa would have heard rescue in that question and mistaken it for home. This Kessa heard the risk. She looked at the Raven Court, then at the wolf soldiers, then at the living throne behind her. It had completed at last. But the seat remained empty. Not because it rejected her, because it would not take what she had not chosen to give. I will return, she said, when my father's name is cleared in your hall, when the missing are counted, when packless no longer means unprotected, and when I can cross this bridge without being bought, sold, or blessed into obedience. Marek bowed his head. The Alpha King bowed first. A murmur passed through the wolves. Kessa felt the Raven Court watching, waiting to see whether she would turn the bow into a crown. She did not. She stepped past Merrick to the center of the bridge, where Wolfstone and Ravenstone met under her feet. The ravens gathered behind her, not a throne now, but a dark mantle of wings. Marek's shadow wolf stood at his side, whole enough to lower its head toward her without pain. The gesture was not mate claim. Not yet. It was recognition. Kessa accepted it with a steady gaze. For 9 years, they had named her traitor's daughter because it was easier than naming the men who betrayed the treaty. Now the river carried the truth in both directions. Behind her, Edric Lorn's shadow faded into dawn, finally unchoked by ink. "Daughter," he whispered. This time, the word did not hurt. Kessa looked toward the rising sun over the black river and the silver banners, with ravens circling high above like pieces of night refusing to disappear. She had been sold at dusk. By dawn, no court owned her.